But one of the things that's interesting to me, I had a friend that used to be a curator, I guess, at the museum. He worked at the museum in Kerrville. There was a museum there a long time ago. And he had worked there for a couple of years, and he was adamant that it wasn't haunted. It was a big old Victorian house from the 1800s that had been there for a long time. And he was like, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. I went in there with my brother, and we walked around because he was a friend of ours. We went to go visit him or whatever. And I felt energy there really bad, like not bad, like it was bad energy, but I felt it big time. Like I could feel it, and I was like, this place is absolutely crawling with energy. And there was a girl that worked there on the days when he was off, and he said, well, she claims that it's haunted, but I never saw anything. She had been there for about 6 months, and then she showed up and brought him something to eat because they were friends or whatever, and she showed up and we started chatting with her, and she was like, oh yeah, I see stuff here all the time. She's like, in fact, I keep in contact with some of the people who've come through here, and they have seen things and heard things. But yet here was this guy, this friend of ours, who worked there for like 2 years and was there 5 days a week, sometimes 6, and never claimed to have never saw anything or had anything happen. Now that's really weird to me. And then he lived in a house that was an old house too, out in the country, and he claimed that in that house, like he would see the ghost of his stepdad. So it wasn't like he wasn't open to it at all. He just really did not believe that there was anything in that museum. He didn't feel it. So it's really weird, like how this works. But yet this young lady comes and she's like, "Oh yeah, this place is haunted." And in one of the areas where I felt the most activity, in one of the upstairs rooms. It's a pretty big, neat old house. I don't know if it's still a museum or what, but this was years and years ago. But it just, that one area, I told my brother, I was like, man, this area just really, it makes my skin crawl. It gives me the creeps. And there were these old antique dolls in there, and it made me, and that's a big part of it probably too. But yeah, it was. I mean, I felt like then there was this like glass case where they had these old pioneer tools and stuff that people had found around the area, and they were in this glass case, and that area gave me a lot of weird energy. And the young lady comes with her friend, and they were like, "Yeah, it's this one area," and they took us up right to that area. And so I asked my friend, I'm not going to say his name on permission, but his name started with a D. I'll call him D. So I asked my friend D, I was like, do you don't ever feel anything up here? And he goes, nope. I was like, I come through all the time. I work here every day. I don't feel anything. I'm like, wow. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how to explain that. I mean, and then he went on a trip to Finland or whatever. And he was telling us how he had seen, or he told my brother, like how he had some sort of experience up there or whatever. And I'm like, well, you worked in a place that I'm pretty sure was haunted, for 2 years and nothing. Yeah. So how do you explain all that? How do you, I don't know when or how it happens. Now, as much activity as went on in our house, there were times when I was sitting there, I had like this little study that you could see out into the living room. And it was kind of a makeshift study or whatever that I had converted the kind of like what I guess should have been like a den or whatever. And I converted it into like a study so I could do research and stuff. And so I could see out into the living room, and a couple of my friends, we had these 2 couches. They were like an L, the most comfortable couches I ever had. And I swear it was a very comfortable place. But they were sitting there watching TV, and like, I guess something happened. They saw like a shadow go behind the entertainment center. I didn't see it. Like I was sitting right there looking right at them talking. They both kind of jumped up, and I was like, whoa, what happened? And I was looking dead on. I didn't see what they saw. So I don't know. Sometimes I think it's just a matter of perception, and then there were times when like there was like my couple of my roommates claimed that the coffee pot had moved, like it had moved and tumped over, and I was like standing right there. I didn't even hear it. And then I turned and I looked and I saw it spilled, and they were both like adamant that it had just happened. I believe them, but I didn't see it, and I didn't even hear it, which is even weirder. Like, how did it block me out? You know what I mean? Like, have you ever heard of anything like that?
I think that it gets back to you, whether you are feeling it or not. Or I think that sometimes spirits, entities, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, energy, will show themselves to certain individuals when they feel it. I mean, it's not like okay, let's go into a place. You're gonna snap your fingers, and then suddenly, they appear. Um, it's like going into an investigation. Maybe the first time, you're not gonna. Most of the times, you're not gonna get a ton of evidence. Okay, but you go back to that location over a few, several times. Every time you go in there, whatever's in there is getting to know you a little bit more. So I think it opens the door for better communication. You're seeing or hearing things more so. Maybe that night, Josh, they just didn't, whatever was there, just didn't want to talk to you. So
no problem.
So, and again, it's all depends on. I think again, we'll get back to the energy that's in the building or that people are experiencing at that time. You get back to evidence. When we did this one museum, and it started out a little bit. We got some EVPs, nothing really substantial, but our interest was there, and we kept on going. At the end, we caught it. There was a photo of an individual, like an apparition dressed in period clothes that never. I mean, that was pretty freaking phenomenal. So I think again, the more they know you or talk to you, I taught one of our friends of ours that goes out and does Sasquatch hunting and hunting. That's a bad word. Sasquatch investigating. Hunting is sort of like taboo. You're going to go out with your gun and shoot him. But he goes out regularly, and he does his tree knocks. He does his. He's got the scope to listen for sounds. He camps in the woods. He usually does this by himself, which is crazy. But it's again, he goes into locations repeatedly, and every time he goes into that, supposedly these hot spots, every time there's a little bit more of a communication. And again, whether or not whatever's there gets used to his smell and his campfire and everything else, or him being in that location, that maybe that communication or that connection is happening more and more than if it's just something out of the blue, right? I think that's happening a lot.
I know when we were at the one historical place you were referring to earlier, Paul, so we thought there was a young girl kind of running around, and we went back again, and I kind of made reference to that. And again, we don't hear it at the time, but afterwards there was a big scream on my recorder. So then I readjusted my thinking that she wasn't a little girl. She was a teenager, and she was really mad that I had called her a little girl. She was letting me know that in no uncertain terms that she was not a kid, right? Because, man, she let one howl.
Yeah, just like, we did this studio, and you got a lot of individuals around, and we're setting up and just doing all sorts. I'm going, and I'll send that to you too. And it's the lights out, and we're all getting ready for the investigation, and you hear this yell, and there was 5 of us in this room. So if we had heard that yell when we were there, we would have reacted to it, and nothing happened. So
we didn't hear it.
No, and so that's another.
It was
cool
like it
one.
was trying to scare us. It was kind of like, oh my God, I'm hearing.
Well, or we tell them, make a noise. Here's this recorder with a light on. Yell into it, and you let us know you hear it. Well, guess what? It did, but we didn't hear it at that time. So yeah, I think it's all relative. It really is.
And do you guys have you seen apparitions, like full on apparitions, during the course of your investigations?
I was at a church, and it was a spiritualist church. So working with the congregation or individuals there, and they're always inviting spirits to come in, relatives, whatever, to be part of it. It's like a healing thing. And we were doing an investigation, and I was at the pulpit, and they had talk about this apparition at the very back of the room, that there was always something there. So I concentrated. I had my eyes focused while I was doing the session, or while we all were doing the session. I focused on that one particular area because, I was hoping to catch something. Well, then there's the coat hangers with the paper over it, that you hang your coat on and things like that. I could see something blocking that out and going back, and blocking that out and going back. And another investigator went around to that particular. It was a dark shadow. Went to that location, and she could feel cold spots, but did not see that. And I seen this apparition literally beside her, and then going back. So for me, that was, other than my father, this was my first apparition. I don't know if you've seen anything, Jay.
Well, it goes back to my opening story of who's that guy in the doorway. So yeah, I have seen them in my life, but I mean, not recently while we were investigating, but I have seen them.
I mean, it's scary because sometimes if you're not expecting it, then it happens. It's kind of cool. One of our, again, it's Glenn, that the guy that keeps on is our magnet for adventure. He was in an old psychiatric hospital, and he's an actor, and so he's got some downtime. So he gets to go into the various creepy different locations, and while they're waiting for set and everything else like that, he's walking around with a video recorder or other light to take some photos, cameras, and things like that. So this one time he took he was looking down the hallway, and he caught an actual shadow figure come in and go out at the very end of this hall. So I think that's like one of the gold things that we're always looking for. I don't think we always get to see them. Other like mediums, psychics, things like that, I think they have a more close attraction with them. One of our investigators, again, we were at a restaurant hotel, and we were doing an EVP session inside of the bar area, and she was sitting by the window, and she was talking about this guy standing on the outside of the window, and she could see it. None of us could, but she could see it as plain as day, and she described him. Had this, he was smoking a cigar, he was doing some other things, this is what he was wearing, everything else like that. And you hear this gasp from some of the guests that we had that came along the investigation, and she was like, "Oh my God, that is so and so that passed and that you're describing him down to a T." We had another one, and you can tell them about the Haney House.
Oh yeah, so we were doing a fundraiser, and we had been in earlier, and one of our investigators, the same one who was very in tune to these things, said, "Who's Kevin?" And like, this is a really old place. And I'm like, "What do you mean Kevin? Kevin's like a name from now. Don't you mean James or Elizabeth or Mary?" She goes, "No, Kevin." So I'm kind of laughing at her, like, a fundraiser for
and she could see this individual.
Yeah. And so we were doing a fundraiser for it, and there were some guests there, and we were introducing ourselves, and I was telling the story of how, she came up with this name, Kevin. And again, there's this gasp, and his hand goes up. He goes, "I'm Kevin." And she goes, no, this is the grandson of the guy who originally built this house. He goes, "No, that's my grandfather." And that was that was just a huge validation that some people are more in tune than I am about things like that. Because I'm like, "Who's Kevin?" Right? But yeah, she was right. She was right.
So, because we do fundraisers, not so much this year because we had just had 6 postpone them till next year. But we go and visit these. We do these. We go into these locations. They allow us to come in and do what we do. The least we can, and we don't charge for any of our investigations. So the least we can do is, if they're for funding, is maybe do a fundraiser for them, and we'll go in and we'll do the dog and pony show, And the talk, maybe share some evidence or anything like that, do a Q&A, do an actual paranormal investigation in some of the locations, and maybe there's a meal, and all the money goes towards these locations, 100%. So it gives them a new coat of paint, or pays the salary of somebody or whatever. Don't care, as long as it helps them out in some way. We're doing a fundraiser here next Friday at a theater here that's has not been able to open, period. It's a theatrical place. They have not been able to open because of COVID, or because they usually have productions and everything else in this place. This is the first time that it's sold out in 2 weeks. And again, 100% of the proceeds go to the theater. And again, it helps them out during a difficult time. So and that's really going away from the shadow figure story. But hey, you were talking about individuals knowing that, like your waitress that came in and talked about somebody there. Well, we had this same theater, is the caretaker there that was always there. He knew them by name. He's retired now, but he always had these conversations with them more than anybody else going into that particular theater, because he had been there so long that he had built up this relationship. So rather than being afraid and running out the back door, his idea was just to have a communication with them as to the best of his ability. Somehow they communicated their names. One of them happens to be Mary, and c'est la vie. And so we asked him, we said, well, what's Mary about? And he said, well, she always sits in one particular location in the balcony level. And yeah, we went up there with her. We did a session up there with an SLS and a K2 meter. And yes, we got intelligent interaction. We got EVPs from there. So yeah, Mary's around there. But we said, when you pass, when you die, and theater was very, very important to you, where would you like to be? Where would you be if you're still on this earth in a different plane? Wouldn't it be this location? Wouldn't it be that you want to come and you want to watch theater and you want to watch live and you want to be part of the entertainment and still enjoy it? It's like we had this bar down there. It's called the Irish Heather, and it's exactly what it is. It's an Irish bar, and same thing. If you had belly up to the bar and you'd like to be there and every day and have a chit chat and be the norm of that bar, and you passed, where would you be?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to be there and with your friends, or at least be part of the entertainment and everything that's happening there? I would for sure.
Yeah. I had asked what they'd like to drink, and the voice came back, Glenfiddich, on my audio. Like, okay. There you go. So yeah, it's movie studios are magnets, theaters are magnets, bars are magnets. It's like whatever you enjoyed in life seems to be where people like to hang out.
And it all depends on the staff too. There's one location there was a regular patron there that was literally there almost every day, and he would have a beer and he would nurse it. So he could watch what was going on and talk to friends and everything else. It was in a community that's fairly small. So that was his socialism. And he passed. But they, out of respect, put a beer at his location every day. And they had a 65th wedding anniversary or something really unique, something. Or maybe it was a birthday. Anyways, the bar was packed, and they were taking pictures of everybody, because they wanted to share it on social media and their friends and everything else like that. And they took a picture of this location, and there was a before shot, and literally they were doing like three shots at a time to try to get, to pick the better ones. The one shot, nothing there. The next shot, there's a ghostly figure there. And so again, they think it was him coming back to still have his beer as part of the group. So when we go into situations like that and get reports like that or see evidence like that, that makes our juice flow. That's why you continue doing this thing, is because it makes it so interesting. because you never know what you're going to get when you go into an investigation, regardless of where it is, regardless if it's a Sasquatch investigation, and the stories and the locations and actually going there, going to places and seeing if there's anything, or going off to or UFO stories and listening and watching the passion of people talking about them. That's pretty incredible stuff.
Have you guys dealt with a couple questions here and answer in whichever order you want? Do you ever deal with anything Dogman related? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, we do, but no, it's not prevalent in this neck of our woods.
No, I think that's more southern than up here, really. I don't think we've ever come across that story-wise.
What about alien abduction?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Janine's being probably... She's got her own story about that one.
I have some time differential things that have happened to me. I'm not necessarily saying alien abduction, but I've had time encounters. I don't know whether either you, Josh, or Anthony have had them where time just goes missing or time does some weird things to you. I'll give you one quick story. Niagara Falls, 1980-ish. I'm there with three girlfriends who happen to be sisters.
Italian.
Yeah, they were. It's kind of the 80s. I got the big hair. We got the Camaro. We got the whole thing. So anyway, we get to this one point, and this voice says to me, "Get the girls out of the way. Step off the curb. You're going to get hit by a car, and you'll be all right." And time fragmented for me. It went millisecond by millisecond by millisecond. And at that point, I had no control over what was going on with me, except that I stepped off the curb, I threw my arm out, I pushed the girls back. They were like, "What the hell are you doing?" This car came around the corner, it hit me, I was pushed back on the sidewalk, I landed on my tailbone. It was sore for, maybe a week, but I was fine. And to this day, I don't believe that experience was necessarily tied to me. I think it was tied to the sisters, but somehow it spoke to me to get them out of the way. But it's never happened to me since. But it was the weirdest thing because it time just slowed down to a fraction of a second while this was happening.
So maybe that's a possibility for alien abduction, is the same time dilation, missing time that people have, and then they get snippets of what has transpired. And sometimes it takes a lot of pulling to get that story out of them, or to find out exactly what happens, because they seriously can't remember it all.
Yeah. Well, I remember going up to visit my parents one time, and it would take me about 2 hours to get to this small town where they were living when I was living in Toronto at the time. And I'd do the same route all the time. I'd go up, I see this guy who was building a boat in his driveway. I'd get to this small town. I'd stop at McDonald's. I'd get a pop. I'd hang a left, and I'd head off towards the small town. Only this one day I don't. This one day I go up the road. I see the guy with the boat. I never go to McDonald's. I never get the pop. I'm suddenly all the way down the highway, and I have no recollection of getting from point A to point B. And I'm thinking, well, that's weird. Was I daydreaming this whole time? Was I thinking about something that was going on that was just, keeping my mind occupied? Except that in this 2-hour trip, when I walk in the door at my parents' place, my dad looks at the clock and goes, "You're an hour early." I'm like, there's no way in hell I could do that drive in an hour, but apparently I did. So that day, I have no idea where that time went. So that's another kind of weird time experience I've had.
So so that might be part of the story for alien abductions, is that they're missing that time, and possibly they're thinking that way. I don't know.
I don't know either. To this day, I don't know.
I think it can be a combination of things. I don't think it's just like everything you do, and every paranormal situation or story or anything, it can be debunked. Okay. It's the same with unless you've got physical evidence to show it. And here we go back to that physical evidence thing. But it's always going to be show me, show me, show me. And regardless of what you do, we're going to find stories out there and that are really, really hard to explain. And individuals, on what they believe, will tend to build you and put you in that location. Alien abduction, I think, falls into that. Well, no, all paranormal falls into that. I think it all depends on the individual. I really do. It could be just something they ate that day and it just disagreed with them. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, personally, I haven't been, but we know people that have.
I have a story of time, I guess. There a couple things I can say about that. One, I can say whenever I was working downtown, running a nightclub, and it was a hip hop club, there was quite a bit of violence that went on. And one of the things that I remember, I believe it's called Satori. Trying to look it up, see if that's the correct term.
Are you talking about the phenomenon where your perception of time changes?
Yeah, it's like a
kind of like when athletes get that where they're in the zone. Is that?
Yeah, and you get into it, and like I have a lot of friends that are in the fight game. Some guys that are coaching now. We're all a little older now. We're not the fighters we used to be, but well, I am. They're not. I'm just kidding. Seriously, I'm very modest. No, there's some guys that I'm still friends with, and they coach and they box and they do things. I coached boxing for a while. I did a lot of different things, and I boxed and I wrestled, did all kinds of stuff. But one of the things I learned, like I'm really quick for a big guy. I'm very quick, and one of the things I had a friend that was a shaman. He was into Buddhism, and he was a very shamanistic person. He was, it's hard to explain. He was Christian, but he was Buddhist by philosophy. And he believed that he was very spiritually in tune. He believed that I had mastered an ability to slow down time for myself, and that it made me move quicker through time, and others were moving slower. Now, that was his theory because he had seen me work the mitts and do some different things, as we call it in boxing. And he'd seen me. He was like, you're huge, you're 300 pounds. You know, at that time I was about 320, you know, and he was like, and you're very fast. I mean, it's very unusual to be that big and be that quick, like a middleweight, you know. And he said that it was a spiritual thing. He goes, you're doing a spiritual thing, and it comes naturally to you, and you actually are able to slow down time. And when he said that, it resonated with me because I do remember many times getting into altercations. And I remember just moving and able to I've always been a very accurate puncher, and I don't waste punches. And that was one thing I never really got winded. Even being a big guy, I really didn't get winded much. And my punches usually counted. And I have a friend whose name is Arash. He owns a bar. He's a good buddy of mine. Owns a restaurant and a bar. And we used to work out together and hit the mitts all the time and work the bags. And he would always talk about he was a technical fighter, very technical in the way that think of Ken Norton, you know, like the way Ken Norton would fight. He was very, and I always would kind of tease him how he'd fight up on his tippy toes, and he would make every punch count. And if you look at the guy, you would think, oh, this guy's not that good of a fighter, but he was so technical in what he did. And one of the things I learned over the years, I would always tell people, they would ask me where my speed came from. Well, it came naturally. My grandfather was a fighter, and he was very quick. But I did kind of grasp onto what my friend David had told me once. He said that you're slowing down time. You're literally doing it. You don't even know you're doing it. And he said that some people know how to do it, and it's a manipulation of the spirit. You know, the spirit controls the body, you know, or the mind, and the mind controls the body. It's all connected. And I remember multiple times getting into fights with 2 or 3 guys and moving around them and landing punches on them, and it almost felt like it was just fluid. I was just moving, and it was almost like they were standing still. And I was able to just like remember microseconds of action, like it was a long drawn out full minute, you know. And when I go back and I remember these things, like I remember each punch, and it was like, it's weird, you know. Almost like when you're watching a movie and you'll see these scenes where they'll slow it down and you'll see the guy's face getting hit. I mean, I literally would have flashes of that. And one of the things I learned over the years too, I would tell people, they always say, oh, there's always somebody bigger and badder than you. I don't believe that. I never believed that when I was a fighter. I don't believe it now. I believe that it's anybody's game any day. I believe that it's a time. It's not a man. There is no man that's bigger or badder than me. There is no man that's out there that's just going to kick your butt. There's a time when you're at your weakest, and a Girl Scout could kick your butt. You know what I mean? Like after a big meal, you're really lethargic and you're walking out in a parking lot. I had a buddy. He was a tough guy. He was 6'6". Weighed 330 pounds. He was a monster. He was just one of the strongest people I've ever met. He's in prison now. He's been in prison for a long time for getting into a fight and killing somebody, you know. So, but he was walking out of an Olive Garden. He just stuffed his face with the endless pasta bowl. This is a true story. And literally, he tried to help this girl that was getting into a fight with her boyfriend. And he said he went over there kind of like, and didn't really want to, you know, whatever. And the girl started beating him up. And and it was like, he didn't really like fight back, like, oh, I'm going to tear her up. But his girlfriend just laughed because, you know, we knew this guy and I knew he was a monster and he'd worked for me for a year, you know. And I had sparred with him and he was a tough kid. And to the image of this girl just turning on him, because you know how domestic situations, a lot of times you go to help somebody and then they turn on you. She started just like giving him the business, man. And finally he had to like grab her and try to get her under control. And then she kicked him right in his jewels. And he was like, dude, I just felt like throwing up and laying on the ground. And I was like, this is a humongous guy. And I told him, I said, I'll say his name it starts with an M. And I said, M, you know, one of the things you got to learn is it's a time. There's a time when you're really, really sleepy, or when you first wake up, or after a meal, you know, or when you're at a certain point of inebriation, that you're no good. And it doesn't matter who you're fighting. You're going to be hard pressed to fight a 10-year-old. You just can't do it. And then there's times when you're clean, you're feeling good, you go in, you're at your fighting weight, and I have felt that. I just feel invincible. You could put 5 people in front of me and I'd smash them all. And then there's other times where I'm like, man, I feel terrible. And any human being on this planet could probably throw me down into a ditch and I just lay there. You know, and I think it's a time. I think time is very important and how we manipulate it and how we learn it. Now, when you learn that time, you know to pick your battles, you know, you become the master of that. You know, the Mayans were real big on mastering time. And I really believe that time is important as far as like knowing when to do things and how to do things and how to approach things, you know, and I was always very good at that, at getting the right time, you know, finding the right time to do what I needed to do. And even manipulating the time, you know. And so I think that that's most important. And here's a short story I'll tell you. One time when I was a teenager, my mother had moved here to Austin. I wasn't yet exiled here. So I was a malcontent teenager, had some problems. So in my own old county that I lived in, I eventually was kind of asked to just leave, which was probably the most important thing. I just had to go. So this was when I was like a young man, and was driving to visit my mother. She lived in South Austin, and I was tired, but I needed to go see her and help her do something. So I had agreed to it. I always try to keep my word, especially to my folks. And so I was driving into Austin, and I got to around Runberg. Now, Anthony, you know where Runberg's at.
Yeah.
And right around there used to be a bowling alley, and I remember distinctly seeing Showplace Lane. It's not there anymore. Yeah. It's like an insurance building or something. And I look over, and I just thought, man, I'm so sleepy. And I closed my eyes on the interstate, on a very busy and dangerous interstate. Now, I'm going to tell you something. This is the absolute truth. I opened my eyes again, and I was near downtown, which is like 15 miles.
Oh my God. So you just lost it.
I don't know how or what, you know, and it scared the crap out of me. And I opened my eyes and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was swerving into someone's lane, and there was this semi honking, and I jerked back into my lane, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm over here by MLK, which is like way downtown Austin. And I'm like, whoa, like I just remember closing my eyes, and I had to have fallen asleep. And then I opened them, and I was that far away. I mean, it's at least, 15 miles, right, Anthony?
Yeah. That's an advanced level of sleepwalking, the sleep driving.
The sleep driving, and I just couldn't believe it. And so then when I got to my mother's place, I told my Uncle Jaime about that. And he goes, boy, that must run in the family. He goes, because I've done that on a couple occasions.
Oh my God.
It was crazy because he was talking about driving from Elgin to Bastrop and falling asleep and not even remembering, just pulling in and going, whoa, getting to my Uncle Frank's place. And he goes, it's happened to me. So right when he told me that, I thought, wow. And now that's never happened to that degree again. I did fall asleep at the wheel one other time, and had a wreck. And I remember hearing a voice, yelling at me to wake up. And it was like, wake up. And it just sounded like a male, like a young guy. And his voice, and I almost thought that there was somebody in the truck with me. And I opened my eyes, and I just slammed on the brakes in time to rear end this other kid, and did some damage to his vehicle. But it would have been a lot worse if that voice hadn't woke me up. So, I've wondered if there was like something there that protected me, that kept me from having a horrible accident, or if it was just like I went into a zone and was not really asleep, just completely don't remember that chunk of time. But it scared me, and to this day, I'll always remember it. I was a teenager. I was like 16, and I'll always remember that and thinking, man, it scared the crap out of me, and I don't know how I'm alive right now. I don't know how I drove down the interstate asleep.
Wow.
I mean, how did that happen? How is it even possible? I mean,
part of you shut off, and then something else clicked in.
That has to be. It has to be.
And was able to take over and be part of it, or something was able to be with you or take over your body, so to speak, and you're able to do that and go down the interstate and get to your place without you knowing it. I think that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people have sleep paralysis.
Oh yeah.
And things like that, or like you said, just sleepwalking. I mean, I think that that's all part of it. I think that sometimes you get the individual that has, it could be a guardian angel if you want to call it that, but it's part of our lives and it stays with us. I think that even in our case where we live, with our Christmas lights going on, damn it. But I mean, it's we have that. I think that there's people here or spirits here that take care of us. I know that in the because this happens when we got the Christmas lights. It's wintertime. We don't general on the West Coast. We generally get like tons of rain. So it instead of snow. But I know when Janine has had a bad day at work or anything like that, because the activity will be substantially higher in the light situation than anything else. So in their world, they're talking, that's their communication, that it's going to be okay. That we're taking care of you. We're going to be there for you. Don't worry about it. And that could be the situation with you, Josh, is that when you did that drive, something else took over for you. There's no other way to explain it.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that.
Yeah, there's no other way to explain it. And that could be the lost time that people experience, that, we talked about the alien abduction. I think that it could be not necessarily aliens, it could be spirit. That manipulation. Oh, God, Lars, I got to get that out of my mouth. That they have that taken care of. That they're looking out for you and making sure that things are okay. Or if I get PM'd on stuff all the time where they're, I had this sleep and this is my dream and I've had this. I have to believe in what they're telling me. And I'll ask the different questions. I mean, my first one is, did something happen in your life that changed the way that might have caused this dream or this feeling or this situation? And it usually is. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, something traumatic has happened to that individual in order for them to experience or have these dreams or have this vision or have this lost time thing. That something is affected, and maybe, or it could be a passing, it could be a pet dying or leaving, and they, they love that dog and it's gone, and that's their only passion in their life is this dog, and it's affected them. So then it's going to affect how they sleep and how they react to things. and sometimes it goes a little bit beyond that then they start seeing things or hearing things, or in one case having a song completely playing in their head, and it happens to be the song that used to be part of that person's that passed in their lifetime. That was their favorite song, so suddenly it's showing up in their life.
Let me ask you guys a question about, you were talking about sleep. And I've talked about this on another episode of our show. There is a place that a lot of people, and since I've been and talked about this place and been on the show, it's called we call it the City of Darkness or the City of Night, because we don't really have a name. We don't know what to call it. But people will dream, and they will. It's a recurring dream, and they will go to this place that's in utter darkness, and the only light is like these yellowy or dull looking lights, and everything is kind of dim. You can see, it's not, but it's like it's always dark. It's always nighttime there. Do you ever get anybody sending you any messages about that or talking about that? A place where they go recurring dreams just keep going.
No, I'm wondering though. I mean, again, it depends on how you believe in these things, but I'm wondering whether they are perhaps starting an astral journey, and maybe it's not happening yet. Like, I keep trying to do it, but I can't do it. But I do know where my rope is, if that makes sense to you guys.
Oh yeah, I know
right?
what that is. Yeah, I've been on my body many times.
I know where my rope is, but I haven't made the journey past that yet. So maybe they're in that sort of state too, where it could happen, but it's not happening yet. I don't know.
I do believe that it's astral traveling, that they will go to this place. But I mean, I've had many people. Most recently, my friend that passed away, I spoke at his funeral in the end of May. Was one of my best friends ever, and I didn't see him for a while. Like, I told my wife, I was like, it's not typical. Typically, usually when someone passes or crosses over, within a week or so, I'll see them. Now, what I mean is, I'll see them, and when I go to sleep, I'll see them. They'll come to me in the dream state, and that's very prevalent when people talk about seeing a deceased loved one. They'll see them in that dream world. It's less common for them to see a full-on apparition of them just in their waking day to day. I have seen most of my really close friends that have passed or relatives. I've been visited by them almost always. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's something that's always happened to me. And with my friend Willie that died, I mean, I'll just say his name. Everybody kind of knows who he was. His name was and Willie, we called him Taz, or Taco is one of his nicknames. But when he died, I didn't see him for a while. It was like over a month. And then I saw him, and it was once again in that dark city, that place that was dark. And what was really odd about it was he introduced me to this guy that he was working with. Like, he had a job. Now, that happened to another one of my friends, one of my best friends that had died. I saw him, and he had the same situation. He had a partner, and they were doing like a job, and they were working in that city, in this city of night, whatever. And so I asked, and apparently this city is not, from what I believe now, it's not just one location. Like, I think it encompasses the flip side of our world. Like, it is the spirit world. It is like purgatory type state, or whatever you want to call it, whatever name you want to give it. Because when I asked him where we were, he said, "You're in Port Lavaca." Now, Port Lavaca is here in Texas, and it's just down on the coast. It's not a very beautiful place or anything. It's just a port, and I was like, why are we here? And then he goes, well, I have a job to do. And so we were talking, and he introduced me to this guy who looked like he was Hispanic, like maybe he was Mexican. My mother's Mexican, I'm actually half. So, I mean, like, he looked like he could have been one of my cousins, And so we started talking, and he was very friendly, and he kind of disappeared and went, and there was a guy who had walked up to them, and his vehicle was completely smashed in. Like, the front end of the vehicle was smashed. It was gone. And my friend Willie was standing there, and we were conversating, and I just remember looking over, and I don't remember everything we were talking about, because he was just talking to me. And I got kind of distracted, and his friend that he'd introduced me to was talking to this other gentleman. And then he walked back over to us, and I said, well, what's the deal with that guy? He goes, well, he just crossed over. And as you can see, his vehicle, obviously it was a driving accident, you know, and I kind of laughed because the guy didn't look like he was in pain or anything. And so then the guy came walking up and started talking to us while we were all standing there. And he goes, yeah, 1 minute I was driving and next minute I'm here. And you could see the front end of his truck was like an accordion, like it had been smushed in.
Wow.
And so obviously he had just passed from a car wreck. And so I guess their job was to, I don't know, acclimate him or something. And so my friend, it made me feel good that I finally saw him and that he seemed happy. Well, I thought to myself, I said, you know what? I know that this is real. I said, I would like some sort of confirmation though, you know? And right before he could answer or respond, like he put up his hand and was trying to speak, but I couldn't hear. And then somebody was saying my name over and over again. And I woke up and it was my wife. And she's like, hey, you know, you need to get up. You need to go do your taxes today. I had to get to my hometown where my CPA's at. And she was like, you need to go see her to get your taxes done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Okay. I got an appointment. So I jumped up and I started showering. And right then I didn't really remember the dream. And then all of a sudden it hit me while I was showering. I was like, oh my gosh, I was talking to Willie. So then I went to my appointment. And I told my wife briefly about it. And then I jumped in the truck and we took off and we got to my hometown. And while me and Anthony, you know, you can remember this, Anthony, I told you the dream before on the way over there.
Yep. And
then when we were talking to Sue, who is my tax lady for the last 10, 12 years, she said, I said, you know, we were talking about her son, Stephen, okay, because he was married to my cousin who also passed away back in December. And she was telling me how he was doing. And I said, how's your other son doing? I haven't heard from him in forever. What city did she say he was living in?
Port Lavaca.
Port Lavaca.
Really?
And she goes, yeah, he's living in Port Lavaca. I'm like, you know, it's a very nondescript place. It's not, there's no reason to ever. And when the last thing I had said to Willie was, give me some kind of a sign, you know, that I know that this is real and you're okay. When she said Port Lavaca, I was like, oh, it was like somebody punched me in the gut. And I looked over at Anthony and I said, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And Sue's like, what? And I was like, I had this dream and that name came up. That's all I told her, you know. And she goes, oh, okay. Well, you know, she continued on about her son or whatever. And I grew up with her sons, you know, we played baseball together and everything. And so I left and I got out to the truck or whatever. And I told my wife, I said, you're not going to believe this. And I said, remember I told you that Willie was in Port Lavaca working, helping souls get acclimated, you know? And she was like, yeah. And I said, well, Sue just told me about her son living in Port Lavaca. I mean, what were the odds that name would come up, that it would give me the confirmation that I asked for? I mean, it was just so weird. I mean, like, you know, I don't even know how to describe that. You know, it's
that's crazy.
But here's the thing. Certain people will get their visions or their confirmation as to what's happening that way. There's I think there's other ways that that spirits or people that have passed that have been close to us or that we know try to communicate with us. I remember sitting at my grandparents' house up in northern Saskatchewan. For your listening audience, it's in the middle of Canada. And I was there when my grandfather had passed. And my mom, there was 3 knocks at the door, and then, but there was nobody there. Somebody went out and checked or anything like that. Then the phone rang 3 times, and my mom stood up and said, "Don't answer the phone. It's her father just calling or letting us know that things are okay. I've gone to another side." And I think that happens a lot to people as well. Besides the dream of what you're having, Josh, I think people have their own evidence or confirmation that somebody has passed or something has happened and I'm okay. That communication is there, especially if it's somebody or something that you were very close with. I mean, a very good friend or a relative that was really, really strong in your life, and it wasn't just like your mother, father, sister, brother. It was an uncle that was always out there throwing the baseball with you or something like that. If you have that connection with them in the real life, again, it gets back to my story about being in, going into a bar that you always liked and sat there. I think the same thing happens when the communication, the relationship is really, really strong with an individual, and they pass or die, and regardless of how that happens, you get that confirmation afterwards, or you see or you hear something that you cannot explain. I think that's really, really important. I think that happens a lot more than people talk about.
Yeah, I think that everybody, I agree with what you just said. It's like everybody gets their own confirmation and everybody has their own. Another example that I would throw at you guys, and you can give me the feedback of what you think this is. My godson lives in Boulder, Colorado, and my former best friend, I'd say former, he's deceased. He died in 2011. Unfortunately, he was depressed and it was suicide. Really tore my guts out. And I've seen him a few times since he passed, and I was very upset with him for leaving the way he did. I understand that he had a lot of emotional pain and he was distraught, but I felt like a betrayal, when he did what he did. And I finally got to make it up there year before last and go visit my godson, his son. And so we hung out with him and we spent the evening, and we went to go eat dinner, and my wife met him, and she was like, he's such a nice kid, and he reminds me so much of my friend. And when we were at this park sitting there talking, it was me and my buddy Scorpion and my wife, and we were all there. And I could literally feel his dad's presence there while we were speaking. And I felt it come because whatever was there while we were in that park, there was something dark there that was not, I didn't like it. And I told his son, I said, I don't really like this spot. There's something here. But then I felt the presence of his dad, and I felt like it cleared the energy out a little bit, And I got the impression while we were talking, and I told my wife this, that he was traveling, that he was moving around and just kind of just doing what he always wanted to do in life, which was travel. He just wanted to be everywhere. We were overseas. We did all kinds of stuff together, me and this guy. And he was very, very adamant that one day he wanted to stay, he wanted to be gone, just travel and keep going. And I was talking to his son about him, and had the last dream I had about him, was that he was on a train. And he was like, immediately his son was like, oh my gosh. He's like, dude, when I dream about him, he's like, sometimes we're on a train and we're talking and he's traveling. Like he's literally just like, he enjoys just being on this train. And it was so weird because the last time I had seen him in that city, in that dark city, whatever, he had a job and he was doing something very similar to what my friend Willie was doing. And I remember there being some train tracks right above where we were talking. And he said, I got to do this job for a while, but then I'm going to hop on this train and I'm going to start traveling. And I was like, wow. And then when his son said that, I was just, it shocked me. I was like, wow. He's like, I actually, when I see him, he's like on a train. Like, what do you think of that? I mean, is that just?
I think that's the same. I think that follows of being what you really want, that person really wanted to do in real life, is that now that person is able to do that. I actually got to say something about you, Josh, is that at the very beginning of the show, you said I'm a sensitive. I think you're beyond that. I think you have some other abilities there that I think that you haven't. And trust me, I don't have those talents. I have the feeling I consider myself sensitive, but for you, I think you're beyond that. I think that you have the ability that I think you should explore. I had that with one of our investigators when she started out, and she went away with it. She went away from it because of other issues, but she came back in with our team, and she started concentrating more on it and finding out what her using it as more of a skill set than anything else. And she's the one we were talking about, June, is I think that she's probably one of the best ones that we have in regards to mediumship, other than Catherine. Catherine's another one, but that's a different focus area. But for yourself, just telling me just these stories and what I'm hearing from you is, I firmly believe that you're beyond just as sensitive, my friend.
Well, I don't. Yeah,
you might not consider it that's the case, but just listening to you and the stories that you're telling and the situations that you find yourself in, I think that there's some more happening with you, my friend, than maybe what you even think about or what you even know.
I can confirm he's living with him. He's very much sensitive to spiritual activity.
Yeah, they're very much in tune with what's going on. So, bravo.
Well, Anthony used to make fun of me, actually, because
I make fun of you for a lot of things, but not for being sensitive to the paranormal or supernatural, whatever.
Okay, I'm going to say something. One day, we were doing this. Sometimes we'll just for the house, just for the, I don't know what you would call it, levity, to just bring some levity to the house, like to keep people from getting angry and upset. We have a little group thing, and we'll meet everybody. And Anthony, my other nephew, and my wife and my brother, we all live together, and we'll be like, hey, let's voice our opinions and stuff. And one day we were kind of in a very friendly way, we were kind of cutting each other down and joking. And I was like, I'm going to do an imitation of Anthony, and I did one. And then Anthony's imitation of me was laying on the recliner. And
oh yeah, I remember this. Go ahead.
And waking up and going, and I'm like, what is that?
Well, that's what okay. He fell asleep on the recliner, and I was watching TV on the recliner next to him. And then he wakes up, looks dead at me, and starts speaking some kind of language that to this day I don't know what it was or what he said. And then he went right back to sleep, and then he woke up a couple minutes later and had no recollection of looking at me and saying whatever it was he said. I don't know if it didn't even sound like Latin. I don't know what it was, but it was bizarre.
Well, I'll do that. I'll have I don't know, a dream of some sort or anything like that, and I'll wake up and I'll tell Janine something, and then the next day she'll say, "Do you remember saying this?" I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
You do talk in English. You don't speak in foreign languages.
No.
Yeah. Maybe you have a past life there, Josh.
Yeah,
I've wondered. I can recognize Latin, German, French, Spanish, Italian, whatever, but I don't know what he was saying. That was just very strange.
And Anthony's
everywhere.
Yeah, Anthony's not the only one that's happened to. My wife has now experienced that on multiple occasions. My brother. And when he did that, everybody broke out laughing because I've done that on many occasions, but I'll mutter or speak. And I've actually woke up speaking and like literally woke up. It scared me in the place I used to live at. I woke up and I was talking just fluent German, and I was like, whoa. And I did have a roommate that was from Germany. And so when he heard part of what I was saying, he said that I was like screaming out commands. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, dude, that was weird, And he goes, it was a Bavarian accent. Or no, he said it was a Prussian accent. He said it was very Prussian, and he's like, it was weird. You were just like yelling and yelling like, something was going on. Now, I was learning some German from him just over the years of being friends with this guy and him having been roommates with me and Willie. And so we were both kind of learning German, but it was not to that extent, like what he had said. He goes, dude, it was like a long, and so that's happened to me many times. And I remember waking up and still speaking it and going like, whoa, I'm actually speaking another language. I'm awake at this point and I'm still speaking. And so I don't know what that is, what I'm channeling or what's going on with that. And I've had these dreams that ramp up. It seems like every 5 years or so. And this would be the 5th year. That I start having these weird dreams, and I start having them like more frequently, and then it'll kind of die down again. And my wife has noticed lately of me flailing about and dreaming, and I don't know. I'm like in another place, another time. And when I speak, there's this language that comes up, and my wife's like, I don't know what it is. Nobody seems to understand or know what it is or why I do it. And my brother just, he can attest. It's been many times, and my other nephew, his son has heard it, and they've all heard it. And I don't know what it is. And I sometimes it freaks me out because I'll yell so loud that I'll wake myself up with this yelling. And I don't know why that happens. And I've actually looked into a couple of the words I had said, like when I woke up, and I remember like speaking them, and two of them actually were very, like, it had to have been like some form of Aramaic, which I don't know what that is. I don't know how that was, but that was the best I could. I figured it out. Like I looked it up and I scoured all these sources trying to find out what these phrases were. It's happened with multiple languages though too, like Farsi. I believe partially was speaking a dialect of Arabic, of Farsi, different languages, French, German, and I've always been good with languages too and picking them up quickly, but never learned those languages to that extent to be able to speak these phrases that I do when I'm asleep.
It could be one of, again, it's just talking here, but it's just maybe it is something that from a previous life. Like Janine said, or maybe something's channeling through you. Why not? I mean, we're shells with lots of goo on the inside.
That's for sure.
I mean, how can we not be something else? There's got to be more than just this as a corporeal body. There's got to be more. Regardless, I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever. I've had the fortune of being around so many different religions, and just as interest more than anything else is lots of friends from different countries and have been able to partake in different religious ceremonies, gatherings, and things like that. It all generally comes together as one. Is that the thoughts are there, the concept is there. It might be in a different language, so to speak, but it generally follows pretty close to everything that everybody else does. And that whether it's Mohammed or whether it's Buddha, whether it's Jesus Christ, whatever, there's some sort of connection around that. And the more conversations you have with individuals about that, the better it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like I've had a lot of people tell me that I have a very old soul.
For sure.
Yeah, and they've told me that people who believe in reincarnation have told me many times that I've lived multiple lives. Tony, my godson, who I usually do, who's my most consistent co-host, his mother is a Buddhist, and she was shamanistic. I mean, big time. And she's very much a healer. I mean, she introduced me to this woman, and they were talking to me one day, and she was saying that I had an uncle that had died. And I'd never told them anything about this person. Her husband at the time was one of my best friends. He's actually working tonight for me. He's been 25-year friend. That's Tony's former stepdad. And so I had never told him anything about this particular uncle. This uncle died when he was 18. He died long before I was born. And she said, "You have an uncle that died that shares your name." Now, immediately I thought, oh, okay, well, that's not true because he doesn't have my name. And she's like, "Yeah, he has your name. He has your name is Joshua." And she said, "My middle name, Paul." And I was like, whoa. And I had never told even my friend ever knew my middle name, and Paul. I mean, and so, but my middle name came from my uncle Paul. Like, he had died. He was murdered, and they never did find who did it. And so he died, like I said, long before I was born. And she said that he protects you. He's with you a lot. And
I believe that. I believe that it's got to be. I think that there's more than this. There's whether it's just you driving down the down the freeway. That's still a very interesting story, my friend. But it's. I think that we have our guardian angels, if that's what you want to call them, the spirits from the other side that interacts with us. Your corporeal beings, your ones that are from an alternative reality. I think it all becomes together as part of the paranormal field. And if anybody says no, it's not, it's this and this and this, they're lying.
Yeah,
I think that there's everything about everything that we do, and yes, we get involved in more the ghost hunting, sort of speaking, than everything else. But I think it is all connected, and I've had arguments with people saying, "Oh no, it's got to be this. This is," and again, we get to that. I believe or I don't believe. We've got members of our group that sometimes are apprehensive of going into a church investigation because they feel that they're going to set on fire as soon as they put a foot into it. So, and that's fine because again, it gives us a different bed to sleep on. But I do believe that everything's connected in one way, shape, or form. I absolutely believe that.
I do too.
100%.
Yeah, I don't think you can just like that is a problem too, and we're running up to our time here. But I was gonna say one thing that you guys, what we were talking about with the whole para unity thing, I do believe that we all need to come together, because one of the things that I believe is that the paranormal encompasses all walks of life, all genders, all races, all religions. It is a very real thing. Whether people choose to believe it or ignore it or whatever, you can ignore something, doesn't mean it's not there.
No, and the para-unity thing is true. I mean, we tend to work with teams from around the world that have similar values and goals. There are teams out there that want to be I'm the best that there ever is. They'll undermine other groups if they can. They'll take gigs or locations from them if they hear about it, rather than working together and being a little bit respectful for one another. And that's unfortunate, but it happens everywhere. And that's truly, or they'll go above and beyond and say, well, geez, I'll pay you if I can come into your location. Just don't let the other guys in. And that's just too bad. It really is, because it affects everybody. Or going into a location and damaging it, or causing some sort of grief for the owners or anything like that. It just ruins it for everybody else. We're just curious. We want to find out what's out there. We want to explain it. We're not the biggest, the baddest, the boldest, but hell, we're going to be giving it a good time.
Well, there's a lot of podcasters and researchers out there doing that too. Like, I've come across a lot of them that are, they'll be cool with you as long as you're on board with what they're doing. But if if they feel the need, they're just going to throw you out. I mean, they're not going to. I've dealt with that quite a bit. And I've had to learn the hard way from trial and error. And I went into this field when I first started this show, and I went in thinking I want to be friends with everyone. And my dear friend Vic Cundiff, he told me, he goes, well, you know how he talks. He's like, that's kind of impossible. I was like, I was going to find out for myself. I just wanted to try to be friends with everybody. And he was right. You can't do it. They just will not let you do it. There's going to be jealousy. There's going to be infighting. There's going to be people who are not going to be your friend, no matter how hard you try or what you do. There's going to be so-called researchers, so-called groups, so-called podcasters and other, people who are just not going to be on board with helping you or doing anything and even actively undermining you. That's just part of the nature of this business. And I wish so much that we could all, that the Bigfoot, the UFO, the Dogman, the ghosts, we could all work together and help each other. And instead of compartmentalizing what I think is an all-encompassing deal, You know,
True.
Everybody's got a piece of the puzzle. Just like you were talking about the religions, Paul, you know, they all have a piece of the puzzle, but we're not putting the puzzle together because everybody wants to believe that they're completely right instead of admitting that maybe they're not 100%.
Absolutely. It's the conversation thing. It's being able to have that realistic and truthful communication about and conversation about everything that the paranormal is about. And just working with each other. It's really, really too bad when it becomes something else. I think it just undermines everything, and we take a step backwards because of that. And that's just really, and like you said in your podcasts and things like that, but you get that feeling. You will get that feeling from when you're dealing with somebody, even if it's on Facebook or on Messenger or anything like that. You'll find out how that person is talking is generally how that person is in real life.
Yeah.
And so you'll know pretty quickly whether or not that person is truthful or not. And I just don't have time for that. I really, really don't. And we dismiss more than I think we should. And that just makes it too bad. I just go back about the respect thing. I think that if you're in a, we don't, like Janine says all the time, is we don't own the locations or the places that we go into to investigate. I get that. I have no problem with that. But if we're in a place that we're constantly or doing in there several times to do investigations, or we've established that rapport, and then somebody goes, at least have the decency to pick up the phone or send me a message and say, hey, look, I'm going into this place. Is everything okay? And let's have that conversation, not just, go trap wood.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys reaching out and respecting me enough to want to come on and talk on my show. I mean, I really appreciate that.
God, it's going to be 2 shows, I think.
Well, yeah, it's going to be more than one. I'm just glad.
Definitely.
We warned you.
Straight up.
We're talkers.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's what they're here for. The listeners are here to get information. My listeners are like a sponge, man. They, and I got some diehard listeners too, man. I was talking to a guy yesterday, interviewing him, and he was like, "I've heard every episode twice," and I'm like, "Wow." So there's some.
We invite them to come on to come on to Cornerstone Supernatural on Facebook. You'll get the feel of what we're about there. We've got the website out there, cornerstonesupernatural.com. Go to Supernatural Sunday and see some of the Janine's podcasts and things like that, or some of the shows that she's done. But just have that communication, ask those questions, talk about things. It makes it all better for everybody. Yeah,
absolutely. And well, you know what? We appreciate you coming on, Janine, Paul. Thank you so much for being a.
Hey, Anthony, Josh, thank you very much for having us. It's been our privilege and honor.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all. Y'all are a wealth of information.
Yeah, you definitely gave us a lot of information. We had a good conversation and a good discussion, and come back again. Keep us posted. You guys have a group on Facebook, and so everyone, I'm pretty sure I'm a part of it. And so
yes, you are.
Yes, I am. Absolutely. I have so many. There's so many groups, and I'm always like trying to keep up. But
you think of it this way: Cornerstone Supernatural. Okay, the reason we picked Cornerstone is the foundation is the cornerstone that you build everything else on. So if it's not stable and sturdy, everything else will fall apart.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I know I'm a part of Cornerstone Supernatural. I'm just looking at it right here. Yeah, because I've posted things in that group pretty regularly, actually, as far as like the links and all that. Yeah, you guys for sure appreciate you coming on, and Paul, been friends with you on Facebook for a long time. And hope that we guys can that we can continue to grow together and communicate and work together. If you guys got anything, send it my way. If I got something, I can send it your way. We work together.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us on.
It's an open. Guys. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys have a good night.
You too.
Bye from Vancouver.
See. Bye.
Right, bye from Austin.
Good night.